What's growing on, growers? It's Sunday, December 12th, and it's a gorgeous weekend here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. And this time of year is a time of year that so many of you wait all year for. Yes, the fig trees behind me are dormant, and it's finally time to start rooting some fig cuttings. And I'm going to show you all how I'm doing it this year by incorporating many lessons learned over the years between all of my successes and all of my failures. This will be a comprehensive video of the changes that I'm making and all of the lessons learned which have given me the most success. So hopefully you can take these and apply them to you as well. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, the number one lesson that I've learned over the years from rooting fig cuttings is that it all starts with the mix. If you get your mix wrong, you are not going to have good results. And I've been struggling to find the perfect mix over the years, and I think I've finally cracked the code. The most important properties that I've found over the years when it comes to rooting figs is making a mix that is both fast draining but also retains even moisture. And I've had terrible success when it comes to potting mixes. Things that are rich in coir or peat have never worked out well for me, and I think they just hold too much moisture too long, but the tops dry out too quickly. So it's really difficult to water them, because if you try to keep the tops adequately moist, the bottoms get too wet, and if you keep the bottoms at the proper moisture level, the tops dry out too quickly. Now, I've had pretty good luck when it comes to using screened pine bark nuggets as mix, and I've found that the screenings work much better than an actual potting mix. So inside this tub right here, I have some of these mini pine bark nuggets where I manually fished out the smaller pieces, and I blended them in with just a little bit of screened potting mix. Now, I know I just said I haven't had good luck with potting mix, but I have to use some, and I will explain to you why. One of the most important changes that I'm making this year in my mix is I am using vermiculite, and I've been incredibly impressed with vermiculite as of late. This is the medium that I use to actually germinate my pollinated by hand fig seedlings with incredible success. And I think it's because vermiculite is synthetic, so therefore it's resistant to any kind of rot, because it doesn't come with any bacteria or mold in it or fungus. When I germinated the fig seeds, I used 100% vermiculite in little tiny seed start cells. But the reason why I'm not going to use 100% vermiculite in this mix, in my mind, is because when it comes to rooting figs, I think the 100% vermiculite will be incredibly successful, but I don't think they will transplant well. When it comes time to pull your rooted cuttings out of the containers, I'm afraid the root ball will fall apart if I use 100% vermiculite. So I'm going to use vermiculite more like 2/3 of the mix to 1/3 of the mix, the potting soil and the pine bark nugget screenings, because I need some kind of organic matter in there that will hold together when I pull the trees out of the containers at the very end, and I think that's critical. Now, if you've used 100% vermiculite in the past and you had success up potting, let me know if I'm wrong, but this is why I'm going to use more like a 2-to-1 ratio, so it will have incredible moisture retaining characteristics of vermiculite with the fast draining aspect, but I want to increase my chances of everything holding together when it comes time for up potting. So here I have my big tub that I'm going to mix everything in. It's one of those 99-liter Sterilite containers. So I'm going to dump the organic matter in here, which is the potting mix and the pine bark nuggets. And then to that, I'm going to add my vermiculite. Now, this giant bag of vermiculite right here was 20 bucks at Home Depot. So if you need a good source of vermiculite, go there to get it. And now I'm just going to start pouring the vermiculite in here until I get a consistency that I really like, that I think will be enough to up pot 16 fig cuttings. Now that our medium has been mixed, and as you can see it's overwhelmingly vermiculite, we have to hydrate the mix. And to hydrate the mix, we are going to use boiling water. And that's because I used some amount of the potting mix and some amount of the screened pine bark nuggets. So there more than likely is going to be pest eggs in that mix, and we don't want that to hatch indoors while we're rooting these cuttings. So in this pot right here, I have some tap water that I brought to a boil, and I'm going to pour this in probably a few liters at a time, until I get the proper hydration rate, and this is going to help sterilize the mix. So I'm going to mix this around with a shovel. So we're going to work it with a gloved hand, with some kind of glove that is fairly heat resistant. And the consistency that we're trying to get to is when we squeeze the mix, no water comes out, but it holds as kind of like a snowball. That's exactly what we're looking for. And it still is a little bit too dry. Now the mix is starting to look really nice, so again we're going to pick this up and we're going to try to squeeze water out of it, and nothing comes out, but as you can see we have that perfect snowball right there, and that's exactly what we're looking for. That is a well hydrated mix. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to wait for the mixture to cool down, because it's far too hot for us to put the cuttings in. Luckily it is nice and cool outside. It's only about 58 degrees, so I'm going to move this outside to the cool concrete and let it cool down. All of the potting mix has cooled down, and I filled up all of my tree pot containers with the potting mix. And the containers that I'm using right here are 4-inch by 9-inch tree pots, and they're sold by a company called Greenhouse Megastore. You can go to greenhousemegastore.com if you want to purchase these exact tree pots. Now over here I have all of my various fig cuttings, and before I planted them I made sure to soak them in a solution of 1/3 3% hydrogen peroxide to 2/3 tap water. So 1 part hydrogen peroxide for every 2 parts tap water. And I let them soak, and I let them bubble and sterilize, and then I put them on a cooling rack to dry off. So now they are ready for up potting. And here I also have all of my tags in order to tag all of the containers with the names of the various cuttings put on them. So in order to plant these in the tree pots, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cutting and I'm going to press it about 40 to 50% of the way into the soil, into the potting mix. And this potting mix is very loamy. All I did was I filled these containers up to the very top, and then I went like this in order to compact the medium down. So I'm going to simply press that cutting into the center. I'm going to drill it in a little bit, and then I'm going to lightly compact the potting mix around it, and I'm going to just go like that, just so it's secure, and make sure it's not too loose in this medium, but also not so tight that it's not going to root well. It's not going to root really well if the mix is not loamy, so make sure to keep it well aerated. And then I'm going to simply press the tag in there with the proper name of the fig cutting, and I'm going to do this for every single cutting. Now there are a couple of things that I'm doing differently this time from the lessons that I've learned in the past. Number one, I am not using this Clonex rooting gel, because I've had no luck really using this rooting gel in the past when it comes to rooting fig cuttings. In fact, when I use the rooting gel, I seem to have an increased probability that the cuttings will rot on me. So I guess that the gel just isn't compatible with the fig cuttings for whatever reason. Now I will mention I have never used powdered rooting hormone, so maybe powdered rooting hormone would be a better choice, but I can't say that for a fact. The second thing that I'm going to do is I am not going to score the fig cuttings. And I've tried scoring fig cuttings and exposing the little bit of green cambium layer. A lot of propagators do that. I find that when I do that, I have a much higher probability of rot in my cuttings, and I think that's because scraping away the outer bark creates an entry wound that some kind of rot-causing fungus or bacteria could get in. So I'm not going to do that. So simply put, I'm not using any kind of rooting hormone. I'm not using any kind of scoring of the bark. I'm simply pressing the cuttings directly into the soil or the potting mix about 50% of the way. And that's all we're going to do, because that is, over the years, how I've had the most success, and I don't want to mess with that success ratio anymore. Now I need to show you the equipment that is key to the success of this entire rooting operation. And the first piece of equipment is this Seedling heat mat that you see right here. This is a 20-inch wide by 48-inch long Seedling heat mat. It's very inexpensive, and I have it linked in my Amazon storefront down in the video description. It's very important that you have a large Seedling heat mat like this that is at least the size of the container that you're rooting all of your fig cuttings in. This Seedling heat mat is great because it is not only large enough for this container, but it also has plenty of room in case I wanted to start some seeds like tomatoes and peppers. I could put those trays right on the excess room. Now, what I learned is that you can't just put the Seedling heat mat on bare floor or carpet and table and just let it go, because it gets too warm if you put it on carpet, and if you have it on a cold floor like a hardwood floor or a vinyl kitchen floor, it may not get warm enough. So you have to fine tune the temperature. And to do that, you're going to want to buy one of these thermostats. And I also have this thermostat linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description as well. It is the critical component to making this entire rooting operation successful. So all you're going to do is you're going to take the thermostat, you're going to plug it into the wall, and then in the bottom right here it has an outlet. And you're going to plug the Seedling heat mat into the outlet in the bottom. And then there is a temperature probe right here. This temperature probe is what is going to sense how warm the contents of this container is. I really want to make sure that my temperature is correct here, so I'm just going to press that into the soil, probably about 3 inches or so. That way it will give me a completely accurate reading as to how warm or how cold the medium is. Now that we have the temperature probe inserted into the center of our potting mix, I need to set the thermostat. And in order to do that, I'm simply going to hold this down, the set button, until it starts flashing, and I'm going to put the temperature of the thermostat on 77 degrees Fahrenheit, because I have found that somewhere between 74 and 78 degrees is the perfect temperature for rooting fig cuttings, and I've really had good success with the number 77. Generally speaking, if the fig cuttings are too cool, as in they're below, say, 71 degrees Fahrenheit or so, the rooting will be too slow and they may not take, and they may rot before they take. And if the temperature is too warm, say above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, it may foster the growth of bacteria or fungi. That is not what you want. And I find that the 77 degree temperature is pretty much perfect for rooting success. So what this thermostat is going to do is, when it senses that the fig cuttings are below 77 degrees, it's going to kick the Seedling heat mat on, and then it's going to warm up to 77 degrees. When it gets up to temperature, it's going to kick the heat mat off. So I'm going to maintain that exact 77 degree temperature at all times. I just use this exact same method to cure my sweet potatoes in another video, which I will link to above so you can see how that worked. This is a no-brainer way to get success. And remember, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, is where you want to be for rooting fig cuttings. And the last bit of advice that I want to give you is not to put your fig cuttings in direct sunlight. My window is way over there. It's never going to give these fig cuttings direct sunlight. And I think that is important because the sunlight is what makes the buds swell on the fig cuttings. You do not want the buds to swell before the fig cuttings sprout roots, because once the buds start to swell, they will attempt to open up leaves and they will start to exhaust the energy store inside these fig cuttings. All of those fig cuttings, they have a set amount of carbohydrates and nutrients in them that will sustain the growth of the fig cutting, and once they run out of those internal stores, the fig cutting will wither away and die. If you sprout the leaves before you sprout the roots, you will not be able to fertilize the fig cuttings. They will not uptake more nutrients, so they will wither away and die. So you always want to keep them out of direct sunlight so you don't encourage the buds to break. You need to have those roots form first for best success. Now, typically speaking, it will take on average about 3 to 6 weeks for fig cuttings to root under ideal conditions. I have had rare instances where they've rooted sooner than that, and I've even had instances where they've rooted after 2 or 3 months. I've had fig cuttings sitting outside for 6 months before they've decided to root. But 3 to 6 weeks is generally the rule of thumb. On a lot of my videos, I like to follow up with how the fig cuttings performed with the final results, but I'm not going to be able to do that this time because I don't want to wait another 6 weeks to put this video out there, because many of you are starting to root your fig cuttings right now. So I just want to provide this video as a lessons learned through my years of experience with the struggles that I've had rooting fig cuttings, because it is one of the more challenging things to do. And as always, if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below, and I will be more than happy to give you my perspective. And when things start to root and they start to leaf out, I will follow up with a progress video later during the winter. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we upload more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products I use in my videos, they are all linked down below in the video description in my Amazon storefront. And while you're there, check out my spread shop if you'd like to buy merch to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Trying to wean Dale off of his gentle leader, just walking him on the harness, and he's doing a pretty good job. Dale, slow down. Very good. Very good, buddy. You're doing great. Good boy. Oh, this is so good. I'll never have to put that leader on you again if you keep walking like this. Very good.